One of the most well-known canon facts about Dead by Daylight's lore is that any character that does not want to serve the entity will get punished by it, with the greatest example being the spikes on the Trapper's body, which were placed there in order to make him comply. But this punishment is not only physical, as the entity also mentally tortures the killers, and in a past video of mine, I stated that the Blight and the Oni are examples of the entity's mockery. However, in the case of the Oni, it looks like I just scratched the surface. The Oni released with his own map, called the Sanctum of Wrath. But have you ever wondered what this map is supposed to be? The Sanctum was originally a popular shrine, full with travelers and priests that took care of it, and with the passing of time and the harsh conditions of the weather, the shrine ended up being abandoned, taken by nature. Kazan, once he entered the shrine, was filled with rage, and he broke the statue in the middle. The entity decided to take this shrine straight from the memories of the Oni, and it intentionally placed it on Yamaoka Estate to piss the Oni off. So anytime you play this map with the Oni, it was all done in order to irritate him more now that his childhood home is corrupted by this shrine that got him mad in the past. However, things don't end here. If you are familiar with DBD Easter eggs and secrets, you are probably aware of the fact that the praying statues all around the temple are constantly watching you. It's a very creepy Easter egg, but is there any lore explanation for this? What if the intention of the entity was not to make this a creepy secret in the map, but to actually have an intent behind it? What if, instead, all of the praying statues contain the souls of the many victims of the Oni, and now they are eternally watching and judging the Oni on his own home, seeing how the man who took pride in being an honorable Yamaoka samurai has now become the thing he hates the most. Yoichi Asakawa was always someone very linked to paranormal activity, as he lost both of his parents to the curse of Sadako. He became even more obsessed with the paranormal when two of his students mysteriously disappeared, which led to him researching and venturing more into the paranormal, to the point that no university wanted anything to do with him. With the help of his father's spirit, he started to guide him to the correct path, which ended up leading Yoichi to a cluster of small remote islands called the Seven Hunters, where he ended up crashing into the ocean and finally taken by the entity according to his own backstory. Now, by reading this backstory, we have to ask ourselves a rather interesting question. Thanks to his father's spirit, Yoichi Asakawa decided to push through and pursue this paranormal mystery even further. But what this all led to at the end is to Yoichi almost dying in a boat crash, and for him to be taken by the entity and stuck forever with Sadako, a fate worse than death. But was it really the father of Yoichi who was guiding him, or was it really the entity manipulating Yoichi in order to end up being taken by the fog? Why would the father of Yoichi endanger his own son in order to find Sadako, an evil spirit that could end up cursing him forever? To make things even more confusing, we don't know if the trailer of the Ringo DLC is actually the canon backstory of Yoichi, as it seems like he is in a very good state compared to how he would look like after a boat crash. It seems like he enters a house located in the middle of a rainy island, but what seems to be more interesting is that this house has a DVD locker as well as a medkit and a flashlight inside it, which seems to point that the trailer actually happens already inside the entity's realm. And if the random DVD assets were not enough to prove this theory, then the call that Yoichi receives in the trailer itself solidifies that this happened after Yoichi was taken by the fog. So by the time he answered the call, he was already inside. it was too late for him. But did you know that the Ringu trailer was changed by the devs before its official release? The original Ringu trailer actually featured a different phone call. Take a listen.
I'm over here stroking my dick. I got lotion on my dick right now. I'm just stroking my shit. I'm horny as man. I'm a freak, man.
There is a high chance that you have heard of the fan theory that puts Michael Myers, Pyramid Head, and now more recently Sadako above the entity's power because they are the only characters in the game that can bypass the hooking state of a survivor and outright mori them on the spot, either with the Tombstone add-on, the Pyramid Head Judgment, or the Condemned Kill. And since the pig is too weak to fit this narrative, nobody seems to remember that she can also bypass the entity's sacrifice with her reverse bear traps. In some way, the idea of a servant being more powerful than the entity is really cool. Imagining characters like Pinhead being able to willingly leave the entity realm or play by its own rules like Pyramid Head is cool, but this fan theory is not supported by the lore of the game at all. In fact, if we read the lore of DBD, this fan theory falls apart. It is stated in the Pyramid Head backstory that after the events of Silent Hill, he was ready to finally rest. However, the entity offered him one last contract in order to serve his punishment in the entity's realm, to which Pyramid Head agreed. Now you might think that Pyramid Head's power goes completely against what the entity wants, as you can bypass the sacrificial hooks and instead use your Silent Hill cages. But we have to remember one very important fact: any action that awards blood points in the game are actions that feed the entity.
So even though there's an interaction between survivor, killer, and the entity is not like watching a game or having specific rules. But as a basic thing, you can imagine that anything that gives blood point is actually something that feeds the entity.
Yeah, it's something that's encouraged somehow.
Or that part of the entity.
Any pallet stun, any chase blood points, and in essence, caging survivors does indeed still feed the entity. But what is the most interesting, in my opinion, is how the blight affects Pyramid Head in specific. Whenever a killer is injected with the putrid serum, we can see that their physical attributes are exaggerated. For example, the trapper gets more spikes, the huntress mask becomes organic and starts growing rabbit fur, and Hillbilly gets even worse with more pores and more bones growing out of him. In the case of Pyramid Head, we can see that compared to the majority of blighted cosmetics, at first glance, it seems more underwhelming than the rest, with some metal spikes growing out of his pyramid and weapon, and some blighted pores growing out of his skin. But a very interesting detail that most people don't see is that he also gets barbed wire with razor wires stuck all over his body, and this is the same effect that tormented survivors suffer whenever they step in a torment trail. This basically means that once Pyramid Head gets blighted, he seems to suffer from torment. Now, how can a creature like Pyramid Head get tormented? What can even torment this monster? And the only possible answer to this is the entity. The Greek Legends is one of the most well-known outfit collections in DBD, which includes various clothes for survivors and killers that reference ancient Greek gods or myths. Most outfits are simply the characters dressed up in a reference to a Greek god, but there are two exceptions to this, and that is the Ferryman skin for the Blight and the Minotaur skin for the Oni, both of which are not simple cosplays of the characters, but the actual real deal manifested by the entity itself. According to the description of the Minotaur, it was materialized out of the fear of memories from victims of the fog. This technically confirms the fact that a Minotaur did exist in some universe, and we know that Dead by Daylight has a multiverse setting where some works of fiction, like the Resident Evil franchise or the Halloween movies, are actual things that happened in the real life of that universe. So that means that there is an universe where Greek souls are stuck forever in the underworld without being able to cross the Styx River, as the ferryman is now taken forever in the entity's realm, and another universe where Theseus lost to the Minotaur. To make things even more interesting, a charm basically confirms that the ancient Greeks knew about the entity's realm, as there exists a charm that showcases a trial where 4 Greek survivors are attempting to escape from a Greek killer. And this is a nice reminder of the actual lore of the game and its implications. The Dead by Daylight game only covers a very small part of the entity's realm. In reality, there are countless of survivors and killers that we have never seen, and this means that somewhere in the realm there are actual Greek survivors escaping from Greek monsters and creatures alike. And this is not only limited to Greek legends, but any mythological creature that has ever existed in the history of humankind, like Baba Yaga or the Krampus. The idea of the entity being so powerful that it's able to outright steal mythological creatures is very scary. Something that I have always been wondering about is how in the RPD map, the entity seems to be more present than in any other map in the game, with blighted blobs growing all over the map and basically overtaking it everywhere, including the exit gates and the hooks. No other map in the game has this feature so present, not the Midwich, not any of the original maps either, or that was a reality until the Decimated Borgo became a map. What a lot of people are completely oblivious to is that the entity's presence is also very high on the Shattered Square. More specifically, this can be seen in the Killer Shack of this map. What can be confused with simple burn marks is actually entity goop, just like in the RPD, and this is confirmed by the files of the game, as this texture is called Entity Decal. Now, why is the entity physically appearing on the recent maps? And have you noticed how the recent Halloween events are no longer blighted events, but instead something completely unique and different to the past? It seems like with each anniversary year, the entity becomes more powerful than ever, and even the most powerful characters in the lore, like the Observer, the Blight, or Vigo, are now gone.
What does the entity gain from sacrifices? Is it just sustenance or is it building power? But that's an interesting bit. Is the entity trying to just continue to live or is it growing power?
Well, the entity is definitely growing in power. It does use what's within its own world to extend its power outside. So as we know, it can create, we'll talk about that later, but it creates holes, right, to be able to go in the real world and pick up new people. And as this happens, it gets more energy and can create more holes and then, spread.
Bigger universe.
Spread.
Yep.
It seems like the only explanation we will ever get about how strong the entity has become is with the planned new games that are on the way, possibly holding answers to the unanswered questions that we have about the fog and the increasing strength and influence of the entity.